In the quiet town of Point Pleasant, Ohio, on April 27, 1822, a boy named Hiram Ulysses Grant was born. Few could have predicted that this child, shy and modest, would grow to become a towering figure in American history. He would rise from humble beginnings to command vast armies and eventually lead the nation as its 18th president. Grant's life was one of paradoxes. He was a man of peace who became one of the most successful military leaders of his time, a reluctant politician who occupied the highest office in the land, and a figure whose reputation would shift dramatically with the tides of history. As a boy, young Ulysses displayed little interest in the noisy ambitions that often drive public men. His true passions were simple: working with horses, riding with quiet mastery, and absorbing the natural calm of the Ohio countryside. His father, Jesse Root Grant, a tanner by trade, recognized his son's talents and sought to give him a better future through political connections. Jesse secured Ulysses an appointment to the United States Military Academy at West Point. A clerical error on the nomination papers mistakenly recorded his name as Ulysses S. Grant, the S standing for nothing at all, and the name stuck for life. This quiet error would become one of the many quirks in his long journey. Grant's time at West Point was not marked by dazzling academic achievements. He was an average student, excelling in horsemanship but showing little interest in military theory. Yet those years would shape his discipline, teach him perseverance, and introduce him to men who would later fight both beside him and against him in the most cataclysmic conflict in American history. Graduating in 1843, he was assigned to the 4th U.S. Infantry and sent to serve on the frontiers. His first real taste of battle came during the Mexican-American War, where he served under Generals Zachary Taylor and Winfield Scott. Here, Grant began to distinguish himself not as a brash warrior, but as a calm, resourceful officer who showed remarkable composure under fire. He carried dispatches through enemy territory, demonstrated daring in battle, and learned valuable lessons in leadership and logistics that would later define his Civil War strategies. The war also gave him a front-row seat to the capabilities and flaws of his fellow officers, many of whom would command armies during the Civil War on both the Union and Confederate sides. After the Mexican-American War, Grant's military career faltered. He was posted to remote western forts, far from his family, and the isolation weighed heavily on him. In 1854, plagued by rumors of excessive drinking and longing for civilian life, he resigned his commission. What followed were difficult years. He tried farming, selling firewood, and even working in his father's leather store. But none of these ventures brought much success. Financial struggles were a constant shadow. To many, he seemed destined to live out his days as an obscure, failed officer. But history was waiting. In 1861, the outbreak of the Civil War transformed Grant's fortunes. With the Union desperate for experienced officers, Grant was commissioned as a colonel and quickly demonstrated his value. His early victories at Fort Henry and Fort Donelson in Tennessee brought him national attention. It was at Donelson that he famously demanded unconditional and immediate surrender from the Confederate forces, earning him the nickname Unconditional Surrender Grant. His aggressive approach stood in stark contrast to the caution of many Union generals, and President Abraham Lincoln took notice. The Battle of Shiloh in April 1860 tested Grant like never before. The two-day conflict was one of the bloodiest in American history up to that point, with staggering casualties on both sides. Though criticized for being caught off guard on the first day, Grant rallied his forces and secured a hard-fought victory. Lincoln, despite public criticism, defended him with the now famous remark, "I can't spare this man, he fights." This steadfast support allowed Grant to continue his rise. By 1863, Grant faced one of the most critical campaigns of the war, the Siege of Vicksburg, a Confederate stronghold on the Mississippi River. Demonstrating remarkable strategic skill, Grant maneuvered his army through difficult terrain, cutting off the city's supplies and forcing its surrender after a prolonged siege. The victory at Vicksburg, coupled with the triumph at Gettysburg by General Meade, marked a turning point in the war. The Mississippi River was now under Union control, and the Confederacy was effectively split into dot in March 1864. President Lincoln appointed Grant as General-in-Chief of all Union armies. It was the highest command, and Grant now faced the daunting task of bringing the war to a decisive close. His overland campaign against Robert E. Lee in Virginia was brutal and relentless. Grant's strategy was one of constant pressure, engaging Lee's forces again and again, knowing the Union could replace its losses while the Confederacy could not. The grinding battles at the Wilderness, Spotsylvania, and Cold Harbor shocked the nation with their casualty lists, but they kept Lee on the defensive. In April 1865, after a long siege at Petersburg, Lee's army finally collapsed. On April 9th, at Appomattox Court House, Grant met Lee face to face. The terms of surrender were generous. Confederate soldiers could return home with their horses, and officers could keep their sidearms. Grant wanted peace, not humiliation. His magnanimity in victory helped to heal the nation's wounds, at least. In the immediate aftermath. After the war, Grant became a national hero. In 1868, riding the wave of his popularity, he was elected President of the United States. His presidency was marked by efforts to protect the rights of newly freed African Americans. During Reconstruction, support for the 15th Amendment guaranteeing voting rights, and a commitment to national unity. However, his time in office was also plagued by economic turmoil and scandals involving members of his administration. Though personally honest, Grant was often too trusting of those around him, and his legacy as president would be debated for decades. Following his presidency, Grant embarked on a 2-year world tour, where he was welcomed as a hero in countries across Europe and Asia. In his later years, financial misfortune struck again, but he found redemption in writing his memoirs. As he battled throat cancer, Grant poured his energy into completing his personal memoirs, a work that remains one of the finest military autobiographies in American literature. He died on July 23, 1885, just days after finishing the final pages. His words, like his deeds, would endure. Ulysses S. Grant's life was a testament to perseverance. He endured failure, doubt, and hardship, yet when the nation needed him most, he rose to the challenge. As a general, he brought the Union to victory. As a president, he sought peace and justice, and as a man, he faced his trials with quiet determination. His story remains one of the great American journeys, the rise of an ordinary man to extraordinary heights, forever etched into the fabric of history.